this video, we are going to cover the 3 pages of specific learning disability eligibility paperwork. The first page is the documentation of intervention and evaluation results. The first section on this page is the problem identification or the statement of the problem. So this is where you're going to want to use baseline data and you're going to provide a performance discrepancy statement for all identified areas of concern in the relevant domains that were tested. So in this section you would talk about academic performance, functional performance, cognitive functioning, communicative status, any social emotional information that you have, motor abilities, health, hearing, and vision, if those were things that were tested in areas of concern. In the case of Kelly's case study, the area of concern is math. So as you can see below, there are 2 statements pertaining to her math abilities and the identification of the problem in math and the statement of the problem. The first statement, Kelly has discrepant scores in math calculations and general math concepts. Baseline scores on CVMs administered to the first grade class did not indicate adequate progress. You could also say that she was given a CVM computation probe with 25 math computation problems representative of the first grade math computation yearly expectation. Her mean score was 1 compared to the class average mean score of 5. Those are 2 different ways that you could state the problem in terms of Kelly's discrepancy in math. The second section is problem analysis. This is the section where you want to detail out the student's skill, strengths, and weaknesses in the identified area of concern. So you're going to also want to attach evidence. You're going to notice in all of the different sections of this paperwork, they're going to ask for evidence to be attached. So the evidence that you attach could be the progress monitoring, data points, you could graph them, you could also include different pieces of work. So you would definitely be including strengths in this section, but in pertaining to Kelly's case study, unfortunately, they really didn't provide much information in terms of her strengths. So our statement here is that Kelly struggles to understand basic number concepts based on CBM scores and daily work and observations from Mrs. Lockhart, her teacher. She continues to show slow progress with basic first grade math concepts. She doesn't understand place value and has received intensive instruction from her general education teacher. You could also say that her weaknesses are math computation, general math concepts, and place value. The next section is plan development, speaking specifically to the interventions. So when her plans were developed, what specific interventions were performed? You're going to describe the previous and current intervention plans. So you're going to talk about what happened in Tier 1, what happened in that supplemental Tier 2 phase, and then that intensive Tier 3 phase. You're going to include evidence that the interventions that you performed were scientifically based and that they were implemented with integrity. And again, you're going to attach that plan or evidence. So as you can see below, we talked about the Tier 1 services that Kelly received in her classroom, along with the Tier 2 services that she was receiving. Evidence could include a chart that shows the minutes that the student was worked on within each tier. The next section is in the plan evaluation is the educational progress. So here's where you're going to provide documentation of the student progress over time as a result of the intervention. And again, you're going to want to attach evidence or any graphs that you have completed. So in Kelly's case, her initial baseline mean of 1 compared to her peer mean of 5 would be her educational progress over time. So in Tier 1, we're talking about after 9 weeks of monitoring in her primary prevention, she demonstrated a slope of 0.125 digits per week compared to the peer slope of 0.25 digits per week. And then in Tier 2, after another 9 weeks of intervention, she demonstrated that same slope of 0.125 compared to the peer slope of 0.5 digits. So we're seeing the peer slope going up and progressing, while Kelly's is just continuing to stay at 0.125 digits per week. The next section in the plan evaluation is discrepancy. So you're going to want to state the current performance discrepancy after intervention. So what is the difference between the student's level of performance compared to the performance of the peers or scientifically based standards of expected performance? And again, you're going to want to attach that evidence. So in Kelly's case, she has a discrepancy in math calculations and basic math concepts after having 27 weeks of intervention using multiple research-based interventions. Her slope is still 0.125 compared to her peer norm of 0.5 in her classroom. The next section in the plan evaluation sections are instructional needs. So what are the students' needs in the areas of curriculum, instruction, and environment? So what are you providing the student in addition to what the general education students are being provided? You're going to include a statement of whether their needs in terms of materials, planning, and personnel required for intervention implementation are significantly different from those of their gen ed peers. And again, you're going to attach evidence. So in this case, Kelly needs a small group setting. She needs additional support with memorization, calculation, place value, basic math concepts at the first grade level. She needs more repetition and monitoring to increase skills. The last section on this page is just to include any additional information necessary for decision making. You can really just report anything that's educationally relevant, necessary for the team to make a decision, including information maybe regarding eligibility, exclusionary, and inclusionary criteria. And those are sections that we're going to talk about on the following pages. And again, you would attach evidence. In this case, we don't have any more information to add in terms of Kelly. So moving on to page 2, the eligibility determination for specific learning disability. The first section is the determinant factors. So these are things that are looked for throughout the evaluation process for making a student eligible for a specific learning disability. If any one of these 3 boxes is checked yes, then the student is not eligible for services under IDEA under specific learning disability, and the team must complete the eligibility determination section accordingly, meaning that they will check that the student is not eligible. If all the answers are no, then you're going to complete the following sections below. So the first 2 are saying that after looking at this, after evaluating the student, either a lack of appropriate instruction in reading or a lack of appropriate instruction in math are the reason that the student was suspected to have a specific learning disability. In this case, in Kelly's case, neither is true. She received appropriate instruction in both areas. The last is saying that there was found that the student had limited English proficiency, and that is why it was suspected that the student had a disability. And in this case, again, for Kelly, the answer is no. There are no concerns about limited English proficiency. So because we checked no to all 3 boxes, we're going to move down to the exclusionary criteria. So in this case, this is saying that after the evaluation process, it was found that Kelly doesn't have a specific learning disability, that maybe one of these factors are why she was struggling. In this case, we checked no to all of these because it was not found that she had a visual, hearing, or motor disability. It was not found that she had a cognitive disability, an emotional disability. Cultural factors did not come into play, and there's not environmental or economic disadvantage. If any of these boxes were checked yes, then the student cannot have a primary eligibility of specific learning disability. And that's mainly because if you checked any of the top 3 boxes, you're basically saying that it was found that no, that student does not have a specific learning disability, but that they have a cognitive disability or an emotional disability. And then if that was the case, you would complete the eligibility paperwork for all other disabilities. Moving down to inclusionary criteria, this is talking about the student's educational progress over time. So they're really looking for whether or not the student is progressing at a significantly slower rate than is expected in any areas of concern. And there are 3 options. You can check no if you have found that the student is not progressing at a significantly slower rate. Or there are 2 different yes options. Either yes, the student's progressing at a significantly slower rate than expected, or the student is making an acceptable rate of progress, but only because of the intensity of the intervention that's being provided. In this case, we are saying yes, Kelly is progressing at a significantly slower rate because her slope is not improving. And then the area that she is not improving in is math calculations and basic math skills. So basically, RTI is not meeting her needs. The last section on this page is discrepancy just in one point in time. And the evidence that you have placed in the previous page, the documentation of evaluation results, really needs to support the team's answer to this question. So again, there are three options. Either no, or yes, the student's performance is significantly discrepant, or the student's performance is not currently discrepant, but only because of the intensity of the intervention that's being provided. In Kelly's case, the student's performance is significantly discrepant. Again, that slope is not improving, and the gap is widening between where she is at and where her peers are at. The area is math. There were 27 weeks worth of CBMs, and there is Kelly's not making any progress. And then in terms of the evaluation process, there were a battery of tests that were performed on her that ruled out any other types of disabilities, her teacher's observations, and interviewing the teacher as well. Moving on to the third and final page of the eligibility paperwork for specific learning disability. This one is talking about instructional needs. So are the student's needs in any areas of concern significantly different from the needs of typical peers and of an intensity or type that exceeds general education resources? So it's either going to be yes or no. In Kelly's case, it is yes. Her instructional needs are significantly different and exceed general education resources. She has had 27 weeks of intervention, and at this point, her slope is not improving. And the area is math calculations or basic math skills. If any of the boxes in this section are marked no, then the student does not have a specific learning disability, and then the team would complete the eligibility determination accordingly, saying that they do not have a specific learning disability. This next section is an optional criteria section. So it's basically saying that after determining that the criteria in the preceding sections are met, the district could choose to do an IQ achievement discrepancy model. So they would look at a battery of IQ tests versus what the student is achieving and seeing if there's a discrepancy there. If you're using this model, then you would complete this section. In this case, the school district did do IQ tests, and so there is a discrepancy between the achievement of the student, in this case Kelly, and the ability, and it's not correctable without special education and related services. And this would be also needed to be documented in the documentation of evaluation results page. And again, the area is math calculations and basic math for Kelly. So then we're going to move on to the eligibility determination. So step one is the disability adversely affecting educational performance. And it's either yes or no. In this case, the answer is yes, because based on the answers to the questions in determinant factors, exclusionary criteria, and inclusionary criteria, we have found that the student has a specific learning disability. Everything else has been ruled out. So the only thing that could be the cause of this at this point would be a specific learning disability. If the answer is no, the student is not eligible for special education services under the category of specific learning disability, and the team must complete step 2 below. If the answer is yes, then you're going to indicate the area below and complete step 2. So in Kelly's case, it's mathematical calculation and mathematical problem solving. In step 2, we're looking at special education and related services. So you're either going to check that specialized instruction is required in order for the student to make progress and reduce discrepancy, meaning that they are eligible, or no, special instruction is not required for the student to make progress and reduce discrepancy, and they're not eligible. So if you had checked yes to any of the boxes above and found that the student did not have a specific learning disability, you would come to this section and check that specialized instruction is not required. And then this last section is just for the team members who are present at the meeting to go ahead and sign off, and they're either going to say yes, they agree with this, or no, they do not agree with this. If any participant disagrees with the team's decision, they must submit a separate statement presenting his or her conclusions as to why they disagree with this statement. So these are the 3 pieces of paperwork for making a student eligible under specific learning disability. This would be something that a team would complete together, and most likely you would complete with the help of a psychologist and definitely many members of the team. This would not be something that you would be required to do by yourself, but hopefully you have a better understanding of this paperwork at this point.